Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are really cutting through the noise around cloud economics. If you're here to get your head around the big cost-saving tools and you want that knowledge fast, this is for you. We're doing a deep dive into total cost of ownership and some of those foundational AWS strategies. Getting your stuff into the cloud, that's just step one. The real challenge is optimizing that variable cost structure that comes with it. We're going to pull out the most important nuggets for you. Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we even start?
We have to start with the foundation, and that's total cost of ownership, or TCO. You really can't begin any serious cloud migration or any cost-saving plan without getting a precise baseline first. And a lot of people who follow this topic, they see TCO as just a box to check, but it's not. It's a map. It shows you exactly where your money, and maybe more importantly, your team's time is actually being spent.
Okay, so let's define that old school on-premises TCO for a second, because I want to pivot to where that calculation goes wrong when people move to the cloud. So running your own data centers.
Yeah.
We know we're counting hardware, software licenses. What are the big sort of hidden costs that still catch people off guard?
The hidden costs are almost always the operational things. I mean, yes, you have the big upfront capital expenditure, the CapEx, that's your servers, your networking gear, all that. But then you have the environment itself, the actual data center space, the huge utility bills for power, and of course, the very aggressive cooling you need.
That air conditioning bill must be huge.
It's not cheap, no.
Can you give us a sense of scale on that? Like what percentage of a traditional TCO budget is just eaten up by the building and the electricity?
It can vary a lot, of course, but for a big data center, power and cooling can easily be, say, 15 to 30% of the entire TCO, and that's before you even factor in the staff needed just to manage the facilities. Which brings us to the biggest recurring cost, really. Personnel. Maintenance, patching, physical security, fixing things when they break, planning for more capacity. All that time adds up. It has to be in your TCO.
So you buy the asset once, and then you just pay and pay and pay to keep it alive.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have this model. It's heavily based on fixed upfront capital. It's predictable, I guess, even if it's super expensive. So what does this all mean when we move to the cloud? How does that TCO model fundamentally shift, and why does that shift cause so much financial pain for companies that aren't ready for it?
The shift itself is, well, it's pretty simple on the surface. You move almost entirely from CapEx to OpEx, operating expenditure. The cost of the physical hardware, the utilities, the building space, all of that just vanishes. You're paying based on usage. But the pain, the financial pain, comes from a concept I like to call infinitely scalable neglect.
Infinitely scalable neglect. I like that. It sounds provocative. Tell me what you mean.
Okay, so think about it. On-prem, your costs are mostly fixed. If you buy a server and you don't really use it, well, you still paid for it once.
Yeah.
Your electricity bill stays pretty stable. In the cloud, if you spin up a resource and just forget about it and it runs for 3 years, that neglect scales infinitely. You just keep paying month after month, dollar after dollar for something that might be giving you zero business value.
Right. And that personnel cost doesn't actually disappear, does it?
No, it just shifts. It transforms. You don't need maintenance staff anymore, but you absolutely desperately need people with expertise in FinOps, governance, and cloud architecture. People who know how to use, and more importantly, how to turn off resources correctly.
That's the real insight here, isn't it? The TCO problem changes from managing physical things to managing human discipline and variable spending. Okay, so since that consumption is totally variable, the next logical step is figuring out how to control it with commitment-based savings. This is where we get into the really interesting strategies that AWS built to handle all that uncontrolled OpEx chaos.
Exactly right. When your usage is unpredictable, you pay the highest rate. That's the on-demand rate. The second you can confidently predict any amount of usage, you should commit to it. And that brings us to the two main tools for that commitment: reserved instances and savings plans.
Okay, let's start with reserved instances, RIRIs. They've been the bedrock of this for years. What makes them so attractive, and what are the biggest limitations?
So RIs, they offer the deepest discounts. I mean, sometimes up to 75% off that on-demand price. But that's because they demand the highest level of commitment from you, the most predictability. When you buy an RI, you are committing to a specific instance type in a specific region with a specific tenancy, and this is a big one, a specific operating system, for 1 or 3 years.
Well, I'm basically locking in a specific virtual box. Let's say it's running Windows in the US East region for 3 years. What happens if 6 months from now, my business decides, hey, we're moving this app to Linux? What happens to my Windows RI?
And that's the core risk. You own that commitment. So even if you shut down that specific Windows server and you move to a Linux one, you are still paying for the reserve capacity of that original Windows commitment for the full term. You can
Yeah.
try to sell them on the marketplace, but it's not like it's a guaranteed instant thing. This rigidity is why they're really only best for your most stable, predictable core infrastructure.
Yeah, that inflexibility. That must have driven customers crazy. And I'm guessing that frustration led directly to the next thing, savings plans. How do they solve that specificity problem?
Savings plans are really the evolution of that model. They fix the rigidity problem by just changing what you commit to. So instead of committing to a specific server type, you commit to a spend amount. You commit to a certain dollar per hour of compute usage for 1 or 3 years. For example, you just commit to spending $10 an hour on compute, and it doesn't matter what specific resource is using it.
Ah, okay, so it's not about the configuration anymore, it's about the cash flow. That sounds way more flexible. But where does that discount apply?
And this is why we need to get into the key strategic difference for you. There are two main types. First, you have the compute savings plan. This one is the most flexible, by far. Your $10 an hour commitment can apply across any instance family, any region, and even different services like EC2, Fargate, and Lambda. It's perfect for those dynamic scaling environments.
And the second time?
The second is the EC2 Instance Savings Plan. This one gives you a slightly better discount than the compute savings plan, but it brings back a little bit of that rigidity. You commit to usage within a specific EC2 instance family, like M5 or C5, inside a specific region, but you still have the flexibility to change the instance size or the OS or tenancy inside that family.
Got it. That's a really crucial detail. So if I were to summarize the strategic trade-off for you, the listener, it's this. Allies give you the absolute deepest discounts, but they are dangerously inflexible. You're locked into an OS and a region. Savings plans, especially the Compute SP, offer slightly less of a discount but give you maximum flexibility. Your engineers can pivot without a financial penalty.
That is the operational reality, yes. But let me challenge that summary just a little. We often see organizations make a mistake by being, frankly, too greedy. They chase that 75% RI discount for everything. The real question isn't which tool is better. It's about segmenting your workload. That super predictable database. Your critical internal tools, yeah, put those on RIs. But everything else, your web servers, your scaling apps, your dev and test environments, that should all be covered by savings plans. You have to make sure your engineers can stay agile. If speed is key to your business, a slightly smaller discount is absolutely worth the freedom.
That makes perfect sense. So the goal isn't just the deepest discount. It's the right discount for the right workload. But okay, even once you've deployed all these RIs and savings plans, the work isn't done. It's really just begun. How do you make sure that commitment is actually being used? How do you find the next opportunity for savings? Where's the control center for all of this?
The control center is all about continuous monitoring. And specifically, it's the suite of tools in what's called the Billing and Cost Management Console. And we're not just talking about looking at your bill at the end of the month. No, you need continuous oversight. And your main window into that is the Cost Explorer dashboard and something called the Cost and Usage Report, or the CUR.
So when you, the listener, open up Cost Explorer, what's the first thing you should be drilling into?
First and foremost, utilization. If you committed to $10 an hour with the savings plan, you need to see that you are actually utilizing, say, $9.80 of that.
Yeah.
If you're only using $6, you've overcommitted. You're just wasting money. Cost Explorer shows you that utilization rate instantly. Second, you have to track unallocated spend.
Unallocated spend, is that just another word for waste?
Often, yeah, it is. And this is where governance becomes so important. Cost Explorer, especially when you combine it with a well-configured CUR report, lets you filter all of your usage by cost allocation tags. So if a resource, let's say a huge unused database, doesn't have a tag linking it to a project or a team, the billing dashboard will flag it as unallocated. And that's a huge red flag for organizational indiscipline. It usually means the resource is forgotten. It's shadow IT.
So the dashboard isn't just for finding oversized machines. It's for policing your organization's own discipline using things like tagging. It enables a chargeback model, basically.
Precisely. No optimization strategy works without rigorous, continuous monitoring and critically organizational buy-in. Optimization is a team sport. The billing dashboard shouldn't just be for the FinOps team. It needs to be visible to the product managers so they can see that the new feature they launched last month is costing 5 times what they projected. That's how you drive cost-conscious development.
That's a great point. Let's bring all these pieces together for everyone listening. So what does this all mean? We started by defining TCO. not as just a hardware calculation, but as a discipline that completely transforms in the cloud. It goes from managing fixed CapEx to managing variable OpEx, that whole infinitely scalable neglect problem.
And we looked at the main response to that variability, which is commitment-based savings. Rise offer those deep discounts but lock you in, while savings plans, especially the super flexible compute savings plans, they tackle that volatility by letting you commit to a dollar spend across a bunch of services. It lets you stay agile.
And finally, we landed on the idea that none of this works without continuous monitoring and governance. Using tools like Cost Explorer to track your utilization, and using cost allocation tags to hunt down that really dangerous unallocated spend. So really, cloud cost efficiency is built on two pillars: understanding your costs and then applying these commitment discounts with discipline.
And this raises a really important question for you, the listener, to think about. If all of this relies on sophisticated governance, on continuous monitoring, on everyone in the organization tagging resources, what happens when the company grows really fast and the FinOps team just can't keep up?
That sounds like a tough challenge.
It is. The biggest difference between TCO on premises and TCO in the cloud is not the technology. It's the organizational maturity that's required to constantly check that dashboard and enforce those policies. You can buy all the commitment discounts in the world, but if you don't have that discipline, those savings will just get swallowed whole by untagged, forgotten resources. True savings. It demands constant engagement. That's the maturity level you need to be striving for next.
That is a perfect challenge to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll talk to you next time.